now. Hi guys, and welcome back to the YouTube channel Reiki Zen, and welcome to another coffee chat. And today, as promised, we've got lovely Claire Thackray back again from here for Ascension. Hello Claire. How are you doing? Are you all right? Are you well?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Now that I'm all set up properly, I'm fine.
Well, now that you're all set up and we're in the zone now, so we're ready to go. So today's topic, it was kind of like it was actually your suggestion, wasn't it, to talk about past lives, because I think past lives can be quite healing in the now if we realize what happened in the past, what we could have hereditary brought through our timeline into this life, and we can also hold on to the trauma and stuff like that. So it's a very, very good subject, and one that hopefully we'll get into and learn a little bit more about. I know that you've got some personal experiences to do with past lives as well, that we're going to talk about. I mean, I know people in this life that I think I'm connected with somehow from another past life, because there just seems to be that thing there, that connection. But we'll talk about that as well. And yeah, we'll just dip into little bits of stuff that I've got written down here, and then we can ask each other whatever as well. So what's your thoughts on past lives?
My thoughts are, it's so important to learn about your past lives, because knowing about your past lives helps you to understand why you're here, why you're reacting to things, why your dreams are as they are, why your difficulties are as they are, why your successes are as they are, why you're having physical issues. Because something I'll talk about in my own experiences, when there's a past life trauma, say, I don't know, you've been hung, well, there is parts where you can end up with the noose still around your neck in this lifetime. So you may end up with loads of throat issues, not being able to speak your truth, speaking your truth too much. You can have shackles around your wrist. You can have issues where if there's been trauma, issues in that body. All kinds of things. It's amazing. People that have had, like I said in our last video, one life where I died in battle and I still had the weapons within me, and I had them removed. And as she's removing them, I could feel like I called it like the fighting pole coming out, but she was pulling it out and I could feel it. I mean, the one I'm going to talk about today, it's when it came up, because it came up last October. And it just blew my mind, and it explained so much about myself as a teenager and why I struggled with so many things, like going out on my own, walking out at night on my own. There was times when I lived at home that my dad had to come and collect me, because I used to have big panic attacks, and come and get me, and not knowing why it was, because my family weren't like it. There was nothing that had happened to me for a reason for it to happen. And it was only last year that I realized. I always thought I must have been an empath, but I wasn't. And this is something I spoke about on my own socials at the time, when I said some of the things we think that we're empaths actually can be traced back to past life trauma. Well, one of the examples I use, I said, say in a past life your husband cheated on you, and you're in this life and you're talking to a friend who's gone through it, and you start feeling anxious, you start feeling sweaty, you start feeling angry, and your friend ends up consoling you because you've had a panic attack at her husband having an affair. And you may think, I must be an empath, I must feel other people's pain. But what you don't realise is, in that previous incarnation, you went through that. And it's still within you, unhealed. And her sharing her story has brought it up for you. And all you know is that all of a sudden you're feeling really anxious.
I think it's so many people kind of like, they live in a certain way, and they're indoctrinated into a certain way of living, of just knowing that there's only this existence. Where in actual fact, we exist across multiple timelines at the same time, but we also on like a linear level, but we also on a vertical level as well. So further down we've got like the past, and then we've got in the future, and all these things that are happening at the same time. And this stuff from the past, like you say, can be brought up, and it can exist on a linear level, which is something that it's come to mind from when we first messaged and discussed about what to do for the next video, and to talk about past lives. And it's something that's it's risen up into my level of consciousness now, from things that have happened during Akashic readings and things that have come through on the Akashic level, that have meant something to me as well. And being able to look at it and rationalizing it, and just putting sort of a three-dimensional spin on it to understand why that's happening now in this life from then, and why it's creating these reactions. And sometimes just that sheer acceptance and understanding of that level of knowing shift, and can really begin the healing. And it's not something that you'll probably agree, it's not something that you just think about it and it goes. It's happens. It's a long process that you have to go through to just gradually sort of ease it off layer by layer, because it's kind of like, it's that conscious realization. It makes you realize all of a sudden, bang, yes, it's there, but there's many other different levels of beneath that as well that you then need to unfold. And I always talk about healing being a bit like an onion, and peeling back the layers of an onion and getting to your true center. So I mean, tell us about this past life, you know, of what brought you to this realization.
Yeah, God, do you know, I've written some notes. Yesterday I wrote some notes. I thought I'm going to forget some. I might even forget some of it. I don't know. I'll try not to go by the notes. I don't like it when people always do that.
Yeah,
I do tend to do that as well. So basically, last year, since lockdown, the years have just gone. So last year, 2021, I, in October, found out via a dream that I was a past victim of Peter Sutcliffe, the Yorkshire Ripper. For those that are international, he was a serial killer in Yorkshire in 1970s, 1980s. And that came through via dream. Before I talk about that, I'm going to talk about just after he died, the week he died in 2020. Gary was working away, and I hate being in this house. Not in this house, but alone. I just hate it. Now I understand why. So I went to sleep, went to bed, got into bed, went to sleep, and I had a dream that I was walking down Kirkstall Road in Leeds at night, and I'm walking down Kirkstall Road, and walking towards me was Peter Sutcliffe. And I actually wasn't scared. I wasn't scared one bit. And I remember he was small, he was slim, there was just no violence, there was no anger, he was just walking towards me. And I was thinking about it before I came on, and I kind of laughed because there was like a 2-meter distance between you down all the space. There was like a 2-meter distance between us. And he turned to me and he looked me in the eyes and he said, "I'm sorry, please forgive me." And we then started to communicate by other senses. And I wasn't scared at all in this dream, and it was just this healing energy. And I came to really gently, and I was laid in bed and I was on my own, and I was like, wow, what was that? Because I don't know anyone that met him or knew him, even though I do live in Yorkshire. So I was like, what was all that about? In the same week, I also started to sense the two of the detectives that investigated that had passed over around me, constantly there. Like I could one day I was looking out the window and I could feel at them both stood next to me, but they never told me why they were there. And also as well, we need to understand is there's a time when we're meant to find this kind of stuff out. So there is divine timing, because if you find out at the wrong time, it can cause more trouble than if it comes out at the right time.
Yeah.
And none of this seems sinister. In fact, I just thought, well, maybe because I live in Yorkshire, etc., I do videos. So I actually spoke about it in my videos. Maybe there's somebody out there that watches me that was affected by this situation. And that was that. Then last October, I started with, I've had heartburn on and off all my life, teenage years, and it was getting worse and worse and worse. And I was sat in my meditation chair and I said, show me what's causing this, because I knew there was something wrong with my chest. because I knew it was past life because I tried everything and it just wouldn't shift. That night I went to sleep, and you know the bit where you're not asleep but you are asleep but you're not, that kind of thing. And anyway, I'm in this circle, and there's a young girl laid on the floor and she's dead, and she's got a blanket over her, and I'm looking at her in my dream thinking, oh my God, someone's dead, someone's been murdered, and I need to get help or something. So I'm looking at her, and then I looked up, and in a perfect circle around me there was old-fashioned from the 70s policemen, because there would have been men, and detectives in a perfect circle. And I was like, and I looked at them, and I looked down, and I looked at them, I thought, oh my God, I'm in the scene from the Ripper murders. What's happening? What I don't understand. And I looked at them, and they all had this feeling of like compassion and love and understanding at me, not her, at me. And I was like, what's happening? And I just looked at them and I went, is that me? And they went, yeah. And I pulled myself out of this dream, and I could actually feel myself coming through layers upon layers upon layers of stuff. And I pulled myself out of it, and I was like, and I laid in bed and I started to shake, and I started to sweat, just started to drip out of me. It was awful. And I just felt this anger come up, and this fear, and this, everything just started, like I could feel like codes coming in and downloads of things making sense. And I was like, oh my God, it was just, it knocked me for six, to be honest. It really knocked me for six. And literally coming in quick and fast, reminding me about that dream I had with Peter, which there was no reason for that. Because like I said, I don't know him, don't know anyone that was connected to him. And that week was just nuts. I just started to purge. I had diarrhea for 3 weeks constantly. Now, when we work shamanically, how we get rid of stuff is you can be sick it out, you can go to the toilet, you can have diarrhea, and it was just like purging out of me for 3 constant weeks. I couldn't go anywhere. Wow. And honestly, it was nuts. And I wanted to know who I was, which one of the women that I was. Sorry, my eyes are just watering. That's an issue at the minute as well. So I wanted to know which one I was. And my guide said to me, watch a video on YouTube, right? And I was like, I'm not watching videos about Peter Sutcliffe on YouTube because of some dark stuff. And they said, just trust us. So I got on, and it was a 3-minute video, and it was the name of each victim and the date they died. So I'm watching it, and I'm like, well, this isn't making sense. Then it came to this particular one, and it says date of death, date of murder, 26th of June. That's my birthday.
Wow.
And I just went, oh! And then it just came again. It was just like, oh my God, are you joking me? And it was just unbelievable. And then I was reminded of when I was 11 years old, we went on a police tour day to Mulgarth Police Station, which was the police station that obviously in Leeds that investigated those crimes. I was only 11. I wasn't a sick child. We went round and we got into the CID offices. I'm stood there, and there's all these CID officers talking about what they do and how they do it, etc. And I just remember this feeling of darkness came over me, and I collapsed. I fainted. And then the next minute I know there's a detective picking me up, and he's opening the window and he's putting me next to the window and they're getting me some water. I was only 11.
Yeah.
And I was like, what's happened? Never fainted in my life. Never ever fainted. And I was taken to A&E. They did blood tests. There was nothing wrong with me. They put it down to the fact that I may be due to start my periods, and it may have been hormones. But I'd always known that that was something else. And again, I'd done loads of work on that. And I was like, what was it? Maybe I was an empath that picked up all this stuff that was in those CID offices. But what I didn't realise as a little girl was that was the place where my past life murder was investigated. So as I was studying there as a little girl, I started to tap into that and was shut out and just overwhelmed and collapsed.
Overwhelmed, yeah.
Yeah, and maybe it could have also been the guides knocking me out, because had I seen that as an 11-year-old child, it'd have been traumatising, wouldn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's just been loads and loads of stuff. But I also had a friend that was murdered as a teenager. And again, I had a really over-the-top reaction to that, because she was a friend that I knew at primary school, but I didn't know when she was murdered, if that made sense. But I had a really over-the-top reaction to it. What I didn't realise was she was a similar age and she was murdered in the same place.
Wow.
the same postcode,
Like,
literally, honestly. And the counselling that I needed to get for that was actually in the same place in Chapeltown. And again, my mum and dad had to take me to it.
wow.
Honestly, there's been so much. It's been my whole life as well, because I did loads of work on it. My whole working life, my whole life has crossed his path so many times.
Yeah.
My first job was at a nursing home, and you have to cross a field called Soldiers Field. And the times when my dad couldn't take me, I'd have to get the bus there, and especially if it were a misty cold morning, I'd just have to walk over that field. And it was always on my mind, because that's one of the fields he used to use for his attacks, etc. When I went to the dental hospital, working with Leeds University, LGI, that was where the victims that survived were taken. That's where the professors worked that were investigating post-mortemly. And it's like, this is just so nuts.
Yeah.
But it made sense of so much trauma that I'd been experiencing that couldn't be explained.
Yeah, and it's obviously it's stuff that you've unconsciously you've held on to as well, you know, and you come into this life unknowing that you're carrying this trauma, and then over time, because you've started to awaken and see things, become more sensitive to things, that you're starting to able to actually put the pieces together and figure out the mystery to your own healing of what you need for you. So how do you feel on an anxious level to being like on your own or anything like that? Do you still get affected by that now, or has that passed since you've worked things out?
Do you know something? I understand it more now. Because it used to be in certain areas of Leeds as well, that I'd go into certain areas of Leeds and have these panic attacks that I didn't understand why.
Like a sense of foreboding.
Now I understand now why. So even if I did, I know that I'm safe, that there's guides in that can protect. There's nothing to protect me from, to be honest.
Yeah.
But yeah,
quite a horrific story, really, but really interesting in the fact that, you know, that this stuff does attach to us and does stay with us and can remain with us through this life until we're allowed to see it and experience it. Because like you say, if you try to delve into things when you're not meant to, then it can create all sorts of other traumas that you need.
Oh, definitely,
yeah. Wow.
I used to have these dreams as well, which I don't have now, where I was in Leeds city centre, and this had actually started to get to a point where I was getting a bit freaked by it. Basically, I was in Leeds city centre and I was trying to get home, and I couldn't get home, and I'd be walking around all these streets, it was awful. And then I'd go from Leeds city centre into Chapeltown, which was where it happened. And again, I'd be trying to get home, and that's what happened that night. You see, you can't make that up. And I've been having that for a couple of years now, and it was getting worse and worse and worse and worse. In fact, I did have it a few weeks back, and it ended where I walked down Leeds and then into a police station, and they said, "Don't worry, you're safe." I'd never had that, but I was able to experience that in the dream, that feeling of, "You don't worry, you're safe," because I was aware of it. So that's the difference between not being aware of it and being aware of it.
Yeah. So how do you think it's affected you on sort of a physical level now? Did you get any sort of, obviously you talked about having this heartburn and stuff that was going on. Do you know what that was caused by? Did you see that in the dream?
Yeah, basically she was stabbed on the chest and on the back.
Right.
So because of that, obviously it produced itself in this lifetime as heartburn.
Right.
Obviously, anger, you'll know yourself, heartburn is a symbol of anger. So, and it was just literally there. But I also had an issue right in the middle of my chest where I used to get this sharp pain, and I used to have to hold it because it felt as though it was going to explode.
Yeah.
I've not had this for years. And apparently when she was pushed forward, she actually had a bottle that went in through her chest right there.
Right.
So again, it's an example of how it can repeat itself.
Yeah. Wow.
This thing with the sinuses as well at the minute, because I went back into healing for it last Thursday as well. So the sinuses, it's head injury because obviously hammer injuries. Headaches, dizziness, and a lot of the things I'm struggling with, because then I watched a video with the survivors in, and they said because it's a brain injury, dizziness, slurring the speech, all kinds of things, sinus issues.
Yeah.
Obviously, when the soul is reincarnated, it has to heal all that, so
Yeah.
it comes out in the new physical body.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I mean, you've had some trauma in this life anyway as well, haven't you? So obviously you've carried that from a past life, and you've had some trauma in this life. Do you feel maybe there's a connection there between the two, that you've brought that into this life because of that?
Yeah, I do. I think as well, because of the stigma that was given to the victims. They weren't all prostitutes. They weren't even all women, to be honest.
Yeah.
And I think that imprint as well, which teaches about how we shouldn't imprint each other with judgment, because then you start to repeat that.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you say, with operating in the frequency, I came to this planet operating the frequency of trauma, because that was 77. I was born in 82. So there's not a lot of gap between the both.
Yeah.
But I do know that the work that I'm meant to be doing is helping both women and men.
Yeah.
And in order to do that, you've got to go through. You can't get it from a textbook. You've got to live it. You've got to live it. That's where you get your experience from.
Yeah, absolutely. And it reminds me a little bit of one of your recent videos that I just watched, and I thought that would be interesting to bring into this talk today as well, where you were talking about like your shadow work, and working with your shadow, working alongside your ego, and trying to just put them into an alignment to expose the shadow, because sometimes the shadow work that we experience as well can be reflected from past lives. You can carry that through in a hereditary manner, unknowingly, and bring it into this life, and still be carrying that as well from, and then trying to work that out in this life when it's actually from a past life as well, is just, you know, it does boggle the mind really, and it takes a while. And I suppose that's why you have to be at that place and be ready on your own journey to be able to expose this and discover it and talk about it. Yeah, absolutely fascinating. But you know, if anyone hasn't subscribed to your channel, then you know, I think they really should, because some great videos on there, especially that one to do with shadow work, which I do think it does cross over slightly into this subject.
Definitely.
What's your thoughts on Deja Vu? Do you think that's a link to past lives as well?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because that's another thing. Whenever I've ever seen the previous victims in the paper, I've always felt I always thought I recognised them. And like even now, when I looked at them since that, I've got memories in heaven of speaking to these women,
right?
Especially one of them, like the older women would look after us younger women, and it's just bizarre. Places like Mulgarth Police Station, roads, and it can work for both good and bad. You can go somewhere and absolutely love it, and you can go somewhere and absolutely hate it and not know why. You can vomit in a place, you can pass out like I did in a place where
just
the soul knows.
Yeah, I know there was a place like my last job, I used to work in a coffee shop, and there was a lady that came in there, and she was a regular, and her husband's, or her father-in-law, they'd gone away, and they'd gone abroad, and they'd gone to Italy, and they'd never been to Italy before, but they went to this certain place, and I can't remember where it was, but it was one of the places in Italy. And her father-in-law knew exactly where they needed to go. He knew every street. He'd never been before in this life, but he knew every street. He knew where he needed to go. It was just a little town. He basically took them on like a tour of the town, and they were just like, "Well, how do you know this?" And he was just like, "I don't know. I just know this is where I need to go." You know, and that's obviously another replay of a past life where he's been there in a previous incarnation, and he's come through, and he's there, and he's actually remembering everything. And she actually she was very much drawn to the 1940s, so she used to love wearing 1940s clothing, very much wartime clothing. She used to put her hair in like tight ringlets, a bit like wartime sort of stuff. And again, you know, just looking at people that dress like that, there must be some sort of connection to them. Definitely. Where had that with a past life as well. I do think it is a really, really fascinating subject, and I think it's so deep, and sometimes it can kind of like just blow people's minds at the whole concept of it. But yeah, it
Mhm.
really is something else. I mean, deja vu used to happen a lot to me years ago,
Yeah, yeah,
and it was just random things. It'd be just sat watching TV and watching certain programs, and then all of a sudden I'd be like, well, I watched this before, but never seen it before in my life. But there was something within
yeah,
it that meant something.
yeah, yeah.
Um, do you think deja vu as well comes from like dream state? Do you think we experience that from dreams?
Yeah, yeah. I've dreamt of places, especially with this house move we're doing now, streets that I've dreamt about. And we're going to move to Lincoln.
Mm,
And I've never been to where I live. I went once years ago to Christmas market. But I've been dreaming about these streets for years.
right.
And I've been coming, I'm thinking, I've dreamt about this street, I've dreamt about this street, I've dreamt about this street. So yeah,
I wonder if that's like a connection to a past life to Lincoln. I wonder-
yeah. Well,
yeah.
there's generational stuff there as well. But here bangs another tale. During last year's stuff and releasing, I wanted to read some books on him. I wanted to find out about him and learn about the situation. And I got guided to 3 books. And I was finishing the 3rd book and I closed it. And I don't know what this was, but I said, right, I don't need to be in Leeds anymore. My contract with Leeds is done. I've lived in Leeds all my life.
Mm,
And I was like, that was weird. I didn't say it out loud, I just thought it. It was like I closed the book and I said, my contract with Leeds is done. And I was like, that's weird because I've lived here all my life. We're quite settled here. I'm not going to just move from Leeds. That week, and I didn't tell Gary about this. He came in and said that he'd found another job, brilliant job of his dreams. But the only problem was we'd have to move to Lincoln.
right.
So that's a sign as well of the soul going to live where it needs to live in
Yeah,
order to heal where it needs to heal. And
yeah,
then once it's healed, it can go off somewhere else.
yeah. Wow, that's pretty amazing. That, I mean, especially for it to happen so fast.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow.
It is mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling that
Yeah,
how it can impact you and how it can make you feel physically, and even when you're healing it as well. Because I hope people listening to this story understand that you can have a crisis with it as well.
mm,
But some people tend to have crises with it and then push it away because they can't face it.
yeah,
Sit with it and go through it and feel everything. You know,
yeah,
if you need to go, just go through it. Go to the toilet, journal it, be angry, sit with it, investigate it.
yeah.
Because once you do that, they're feeling it. I mean, I don't have any anger towards Peter Sutcliffe. On
Mm,
the contrary, it's weird.
yeah.
It's weird. But I remember years ago in my 20s in staff canteen, and it was an article that was in a paper, and it says that he was diabetic and he was getting taken into hospital. And I remember looking at this paper, and I was in my 20s, and I went, I can't wait for you to die. And I remember at the time thinking, Claire, what was all that about?
Yeah. And now obviously you know exactly why. Yeah. Wow, that's fascinating. Really fascinating. I mean, touching on that, I mean, I don't really have any experiences as such with regards to my own examples of past lives as such, but there are examples that have come up in, like I say, from some of my Akashic readings that I've had in the past. And my first one that I had was about two and a half, maybe going on for three years ago. And if anyone's not really sure of what an Akashic reading is, it touches on like past lives and things that you really need to try and like work out and heal within this life. But it's also telling you where you're basically where you've originated, where your soul is incarnated, and where it's come from, where it's going to, what your soul path kind of generally is. And then it's basically a process of, again, it's another form of healing, really, because you start to learn about all these different layers that are going on within your body and within your soul. But I found out that one of the lives, I used to always get this pain in my shoulder here, and I never knew why, but it was always just like, it wasn't overly intrusive pain or anything like that. And it was only when I played guitar, and the guitar was here and my arm was always over the guitar, but here was always, every now and again I get this niggly pain. I think, oh God, my shoulder's like really tight, you know. And then I found out when I went for this Akashic reading that actually I was a young boy and I was being forced into the French Revolutionary War, and I got shot in the shoulder. And she said, that's why you get that pain in your shoulder. And she said the bullet never killed you, but she said you've carried that on and you've carried it into this life. And she said, so you just need to give that forgiveness and grace to the person that did it. And she said that will, over time, will subside. And it's totally gone. I have no issues with it now at all. She did also mention that in my last reading, which I had a few weeks ago, that she's now of the understanding that when she gives the information across, that your subconscious and your higher self are already activating the stuff that needs to be healed within you, within your soul. And she said that when she was sat watching me, she said, I can actually see things now being taken away and being removed as I'm telling you this stuff. And it's funny because when we started this video call, you mentioned about people getting shackles put onto them, and bringing them through later in life. And that was one of the things that was mentioned to me. She said, I'd had, and it wasn't physical shackles, it was energetic shackles, and they'd been placed around my wrists and around my neck. And these were by beings from, I think they were like lizard beings or something like that from the dimension. But she said, and she gave me the instructions of what I need to do. And she said, when you start to let this go, and she said, now that I've mentioned it, I can actually see the shackles being released and coming away. But she said, you will find that you'll be able to speak clearer. You'll be able to put your truth forward easier because you're not being held and bound by these energies. I mean, so much so since having that reading, things that have happened, and I just feel so much almost lighter, more energized, more able to see, feel, experience so much more, and not be as, I suppose, anxious about it, and just accept it and just know that there is a level of healing going on in the background. And it's like what you'd said before about facing these traumas and going through with them and going through the process, because we are constantly healing, whether we like it or not. You know, energetically, we are constantly healing. So when you need to go to the toilet, when you need to throw up, when you need to blow your nose or cough, it's all this releasing of this energy that needs to happen day in, day out. But yeah, I mean, there was loads of different stuff. One of my lives, she mentioned about how I was, I've always been drawn to like Native Americans and Native American cultures. So I've always been really interested in that. And then she explained that a couple of my lives were in Native American times. One was with Sitting Bull, and she said he actually appeared in my reading that I had a few weeks ago, and just sort of like give me the bow and said thank you for all your work. And then I think that was the life where I had other family members which were kind of jealous of me because I was going to become the next sort of elder of the tribe. And she said some of that resentment still resides within your family circle now, and within your outer family circle and friendships. So she said you need to just tie that off, because she said that's why these things are continuing. And straight away I knew exactly what she meant. And she'd said to us, she said it's still happening now, isn't it? And I said, oh yeah. I said there is still stuff that's going on. She said right, okay. She said, well, that's what you need to do, just to let that go. So yeah, I mean, past lives is something that, is it something that you would say is more connected to sort of a shamanic healing routine?
Yeah. I mean, I know with Reiki you can use a distant symbol for healing it, but with shamanic healing, I remember when I was on my course, I was talking to a Reiki master teacher at the time, and I was telling her what I was doing the shamanic training, and she said, that's life-changing. She said, because shamanism literally puts its hand in and pulls it out and goes right to the core. She says, whereas other forms can be quite gentle and gentle, she said, but shamanism goes straight in, but when you're ready. And it brings it out, but it does it in a place where when you're ready to deal with it, like it did with me, gradually, layer by layer. But yeah, and it can, with shamanism, you can close it down, you can heal it, all kinds of things.
Yeah.
You can look at the soul contract. You understand as well, because one of the things that came up for me, I was like, well, I've dreamt about Peter. What if, what if he's hanging around? And the guides sat with me and they showed me, they said, number one, you forgive, because if you don't forgive a soul, it can start attaching back in. Love as well, shining love out, because that helps it, because only love can win. But they also showed me how when a dark person, and what we perceive as dark, dies, that we perceive that they'll go to hell, but they don't. They don't. And they showed me at the time these angels that came in, and basically they're angels. My guide said they're angels that will go in to people that have done horrific things, because these angels can deal with that and still take them up and see them as soul essence.
Yeah.
And they showed me this garden where he was walking around and he was looking quite lost, and there was these 4 angels stood there watching him.
Yeah.
Until he was in a place where, where he needed to look at his own karmic stuff, he needed to, whatever he needed to do, evolve, etc.
Yeah.
So it opened my eyes to there, even, there is no hell. There is no hell.
Yeah.
There's a place that we take, like the end when we clear the entities and they go off to somewhere, but even that isn't hell. When they go off, they're taken to a place to learn, to etc.
Yeah.
So there is no hell. There is no hell. You go to heaven no matter what you've done, but you'll go with people that are equipped to deal with that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the way I think of it is it's almost like a defragmentation, isn't it, of the soul. It's trying to sort out all the crap from the good and get rid of what you need. Let you transcend and move through into the light with what's left of your pure essence. And then a lot of the time, I suppose it tends to be stuff within this planet, I suppose, and within this life that really attaches to people and creates that person to become the person that they are. I don't think they ever come to Earth with designed or with a choosing to do, do anything like that. It's this life, and I think that's why a lot of people think that this is kind of like a hell in a suppose in some sort of way, because they're having to deal with all this stuff that they need to work through before they can move on into better things. And that's why a lot of people go through spiritual awakenings or they go through all these healing journeys to develop and to transcend their soul to a higher place when they're ready to move on.
Definitely.
So
it is interesting. It is very interesting.
It is. It's and like you say, I think it's something that we can only really do when it feels right for us. And I mean, even when I went to go for like my Akashic readings, that the first time that I went to go, my appointment that I actually made, she had to cancel it, and then she remade it, and then when I went back for that reading, she said the reason why you couldn't come last time was it wasn't right for you. It wasn't right for you at that time. She said now. So the energies are a bit more in line with what you need to hear for you at that time. So so it's really, really important for people to understand that and take that on board, isn't it? Because what do you think people would experience if they tried to heal things that isn't the right time for them?
I don't think it's like with me when for example, with that thing in the police station fainting, I've been looking at that for years because I knew there was something. I've known that wasn't normal, but it's been veiled. I think things come. I think the body gives it up anyway. I think the body gives it. I mean, but for example, say you had a client and they said to me, I think I've got a demonic entity, right? And yes, they probably have, but what they don't realize is the demonic entity is feeding off the childhood trauma. So the childhood trauma has to be dealt with first.
Right. Yeah.
The childhood trauma is acting as the food for the entity. So for although we may know it's there, we have to heal with something else and then deal with that.
Yeah. So it's again, it's going to the root cause. It's going to what's
Yeah,
feeding
yeah,
that negativity off that person, and then you can detach that and remove it from that person.
yeah, yeah.
Wow, it's
So
crazy.
it's all layers. It's all learning about your soul contracts as well,
Yeah.
because we do choose to come and play out certain roles for each other,
Yeah.
and that's where the whole karma thing comes as well.
Yeah.
Because we've been and done everything. We've been killers, we've been murderers, we've been rapists, we've been the victim, we've been the good guy, we've been everything, especially if you've incarnated a lot on this planet.
Yeah.
Because people tend to think about the past lives as, maybe I was a rich woman in a big Victorian house with beautiful dresses. What they don't realise is that all your money got took off you by your husband. Your husband had mistresses, and then he put you in asylum. 10 years into marriage, you get the rest of your money. That's how it, and people go, what? But that's how it was, you know. There were some dark times.
Yeah. Yeah. Really.
And the vast majority of lifetimes are going to be quite heavy and dark.
Yeah.
Probably even darker than what I've spoken about today.
I suppose, especially like if we're going back generations ago, I mean, that brings up to mind something that I experienced not so long ago, which was emotional cord healing. And some of the stuff that came up from that was from like 20 generations ago. You know, so if you go back, I mean, she said she doesn't go back any further than that because that's kind of like, you know, that's enough really. But she said, if you think of going back all that time, 20 generations ago, you know, you're going back hundreds of years. And when you think about the level of consciousness of people then, what went on the planet and what people went through with crime and murder and pillaging and all this sort of stuff, you can understand why there was a lot of the things she had to let go of and get rid of, which was hanging on to me through hereditary means. Was like horror and fear and all this, and you just think, well, I don't feel horror, I don't feel that, but unbeknownst to you, you're hanging on to it from this lifetime or from this hereditary lifetime that's been passed down generationally to you. And I think a lot of people that think when you speak of hereditary things, you just think of like a physical ailment, or you think of something on the physical, but it also affects the energetic, affects the soul, and it affects the spirit. And it's trying to break down that barrier of understanding that it's not just like this linear plane, it's not just the here and now. There is so much that affects us from the past and moving into the future and watching ourselves grow and flourish.
There is so much more to us. There's so much more to everything. Nothing is a coincidence. Everything is we're just here to clear it. We're here to clear it and learn about ourselves because we've come so far away from ourselves. It's untrue.
Yeah, well, that was my next point I was going to bring up there. And you said the word coincidence, and obviously we use the word synchronicity. And do you think synchronicity plays a part in past lives as well? Do you think there's something, maybe, obviously you'd seen things and read things and had these experiences where it affected you in this life, even though it may have been kind of like a negative thing, but it's made you realize to move through this period of healing? Would you class them as synchronicities?
Yeah.
Because people probably want to think of a synchronicity as kind of like light, fluffy clouds and angelic beings coming to you and giving messages from you through your guides and what have you. But sometimes synchronicities can be on that deeper, darker healing level that you needs to be exposed and brought through.
Yeah, definitely. That's where the healing is, isn't it?
Yeah.
I often say in my videos that if you just, I use crystals and I love crystals. I've got crystals on now, but sometimes those crystals have to be put to one side and you've got to do the work.
Yeah.
You've got to, because you can use a crystal to get to do the work with you and wear it or sleep with it. It's like I sleep with dark crystals and stuff under my pillow, just for protection while I'm sleeping.
Yeah.
But it shouldn't stop you doing the work.
Yeah.
And you know, the synchronicity, I can't even say that word. I wish I would say that word, right? I mean, like with my friend when she got killed, the fact that, oh my God, well, she was killed in that area, which was where that happened, and it's just like, that just made perfect sense. And you could feel it just getting cleared. And it's crazy. And I'm actually thankful for all that now. I'm thankful because I know that the work I'm going to be doing is going to be helping both women and men.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people need to also take into account and realize that, you know, this kind of healing work, and I know we've said it before, but these things will crop up and will only happen when it's right for you, and when it's right for your soul to accept it and let it go, and air it and clear it and move it on and do that healing work. Because there will be a lot of people that might watch this and think, oh, well, I just want to get rid of it altogether and get rid of it really, really fast. But it, like you said before, this stuff will only play out and it will only move on and it will only heal. One, when you've done the work, but also when it's right for you. I think if you push, maybe if you push too hard or push too far down something, you can actually I would probably think you could probably trigger some sort of physical thing going on within yourself, because it isn't attached to that. You may give yourself some sort of mental illness, or you may create some sort of anxiety for yourself, because you're trying too hard. You've got to do the work, but you've also got to let it take its time, let that onion peel back and let it be exposed and air it, and just give yourself chance to breathe, to then move to whenever something else raises up. I mean, like you with the heartburn and not knowing what it was, and then having the dream and having the messages sent through that means. It then gave you the chance just to realize it and expose it and work with it gradually over a period of time.
I was just started thinking, I was thinking, I've been working with it for years, since you're born, without even realizing you're working with it. You really, even the panic attack, everything, you're just working with it all the time. So it just happens naturally when it's meant to happen. But you've got to be consciously doing the work every day, and when something comes up, you've got to be really ready to investigate it. I've just been reminded, I don't know if it's still there, I've not looked, but I was 16 and I went to a hairdresser, and she says, Claire, have you had a head injury? And I went, no. She said, no. And I went, yeah. I said, why? She said, because you've got a round scar on the side of your head. And I went, I've not. She said, you have. So she lifted up the hair at the side, and it's a round circle, a scar.
Wow.
Looks like the tip of a ball peen hammer.
Wow.
No, I haven't had any injuries in this life, but I've not looked, to be quite honest, because I don't want to look. But yeah, it used to be there. About that, the side of my head.
Yeah. And that's the
I've
other
not had operations or anything.
That's the other thing a lot of people talk about with past lives. I don't know if you've ever seen it before, but there's a program on Netflix called Surviving Death, and I've talked about it before on my channel. And the last episode is actually about past lives and reincarnation, and how there was some people had come back to the earth plane, and they remembered who they were. And there was one which was, it always comes straight to mind, and it's a young boy, and he's in America. And growing up, when he was sort of toddler to a little bit older, they used to talk about his real mother, and he used to say to his mother, "Oh, well, you're not my real mother. Such and such is my real mother." And then as time went on, that they were like trying to work out what was going on and who he was on about. And then he started talking about how he died when he was something like 61 years old, and he lived in this big house. And then eventually they traced it all out and found that he used to be this actor that used to be on Hollywood in the 1920s, 1930s, and he's come back to life, but he still remembers aspects of that life. And then towards the end of that actual episode, the family worked out, and they found the remaining family of who was connected to him then. So they actually took this lad to go and meet what would have been his daughter in that life. Just like, what the hell? It's just like so crazy. When they'd gone there, they'd mentioned about how he used to like everything to have a monogram on. He used to love having his initials on bits of his clothing or on whatever was his. And they said, oh yeah, that's exactly how he used to have his monogram on his tobacco tin, on his handkerchiefs, on his clothing, everything. So these little traits as well have carried on into this life, and that's something that people might recognize now as well, that, you know, there's people that they connect with in this life, like I do with a few people, that I think there's something a bit deeper going on here with that person, because there's just this connection. It's almost like a brother sister connection, or mother son connection, and it just feels weird. And I think a lot of that as well, people might relate to and might connect to as well on that level. Do you have anyone in your life that you have that sort of connection with?
Yeah. What do you mean, like where you've changed roles?
Just like where you kind of like, you're in this life, but you may be in connection with somebody who you feel may have been maybe a father figure or a brother figure or a friend in another life. Have you ever experienced that?
Gary was my dad. We've had a previous incarnation where Gary was my dad.
Ah,
Was
right.
my husband. It's just bizarre, isn't it? It's just like, and again, that's kind of stuff we've dealt with. We've revealed that, and that past life.
Yeah.
But when we looked at when I looked at why we've come together in this life, it was basically I was his son, that had many issues in that lifetime, with drinking opium and all kinds of stuff, and I was kind of neglected in that lifetime. But this lifetime we'll come back together, and that's why at the minute there's no children, because his focus is on me. And I'm not saying that because I'm centre of his attention. I'm not centre of his universe, but we've needed that space in this incarnation to heal that.
Yeah.
Especially with my business and stuff, which is why he's held space for me to do that. So, yeah.
Wow.
Because we've been everything to everyone.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say. Like, everyone, that's something that came up in my Akashic reading as well. But everyone that you're in connection with in this life, you've had a connection with in every other life, and you've brought them through on this timeline with you, whatever stage it may be. And I just found that when I first heard that, I was just like it just totally blew my mind. But then when you think about it, and when you put it into context who you know on what level, and then you find out that they used to be this and and then you think, actually, yeah, I can understand why they played that role then and why they're like they are now. It really is interesting, and like you said, it's a subject that can go on for quite a long time, and it can get quite deep. But I suppose we have to try and keep it. We only have an hour to talk about it anyway, but we have to try and keep it on kind of like a level that everybody can understand as well.
Talk about taking it deep. That issue that we've just spoken about, where you can have where someone's been your partner, and then they're your brother, or they've been your husband, and then they're your wife, or they've been your sister. That's also where shamanically, when we're dealing with clients where there's been abuse, that can be where, God, this is going to be a trigger for some people, but that can be a trigger where that's been an issue where there's been incest, either between brothers and sisters, which there is, or sexual abuse between parents and children, because that's an example of it not being healed. I'm not saying that's what makes it right. What I'm saying is that's a layer that has to be looked in at. What was the soul contracts? What was the soul in the previous lifetimes? You know, you'll probably find that the father that's abusing the child was that person's lover in a past life. Or another thing as well is when you're looking at curse energy, when people in past lives have bound people to them. Well, that may seem really good when it isn't good. In a past life where you've been in love with each other and you want to bound that person together, but then 100 years later, when the rules have changed, they're still, and that's why it gets messy. And that's come across not in my healing sessions, but in healing sessions that I've seen where we've had to work through that.
And so, I mean, all your shamanic work now, is it all distance work that you do?
Yeah. I started off doing face-to-face just before the pandemic, but now it's all distance.
Yeah.
I'll do a video call with them first where we talk about certain things and ask them certain questions, and we build up some notes, and then they have 2 healing sessions then 8 weeks apart for 2 hours, where I'm just sat in that chair that's behind this camera, and I'll just channel it. And then as I'm channeling it, I email them a list of everything that's been lifted.
Yeah.
And, we go through everything.
Yeah. That's fascinating. So, I mean, if anyone obviously wants to experience that or feels that they might have some sort of thing that they need lifting, then Claire Thackray is the lady to go to, I think.
Because otherwise it just repeats and it repeats and it repeats.
Well, that's it. You just keep bringing it back to the next life that you're going to live. A little bit of something I suppose to to end on a lighter note. I thought we'd just talk a little bit about like vibration and people trying to raise the vibration and raise their energy level. I think we probably dipped on it a little bit in the last conversation, but what the things that you use or you do to help raise your vibration and help you to connect to things that you need to work with?
Sage, smudging, angels. I've got some angel sprays, crystals. I'm going out in nature. I also work with the elements. So if it's windy, I'll go out for a walk in the wind, and I'll ask the wind to clear everything from the energy field. I mean, sometimes you don't even have to go out to do it. You can do it in your own house. That's the lazy way, but you sometimes needs must. Or walking out in the rain to ask the rain to cleanse it, standing in the shower and asking water to cleanse it. Coarse sea salt showers as well over your head just to clear everything. And just dealing with stuff that comes up like what we've done today, rather than going, oh, we're not talking about that on this video, or I'm not looking at that, because that can actually make you dark, because it just stocks up and stocks up and stocks up. Talk about it. Talk about the difficult things. Get it out there, because to help yourself and other people.
That's one of the things that actually came up within the Akashic readings. I'll just touch on that again, but this thing about the shackles that I was on about, and this thing around my neck, she did say when you come to release them that you might get cold or flu-like symptoms, and she said, again, this is things that we kind of like don't really realize, but a lot of these cold and flu-like symptoms that we do get, or things like you say with sinus trouble or breathing, it's all this stuff being released from the physical. It needs to be let go of from all your deep healing or any trauma work that you're going through.
And you do. We need to be gentle with ourselves. It's like with these eyes at the minute with me, I get so mad when I'm doing a video and I'm like that dabbing. I think, God, this looks so unprofessional, but why not? Because there'll be somebody watching going, oh my God, I feel better now because they're going through it.
Me,
it's not just me. And people put in the comments when I say, oh, I'm really sorry, but because sometimes it's really bad. And they'll say, oh, it's the same for me, it's the same for me, it's the same for me.
And you start seeing a correlation of people that are going through similar experiences. I know when I've watched your videos before, and you've talked about different things that you've experienced because of the change in like the Schumann frequency and all this light that's coming to the planet, and then it made me realize, I'm thinking, actually that's like what I've been going through, and that's what I've been experiencing, and again, this light that we get that we get shone onto us again is part of your healing process, and it helps you heal on another level that you're not really aware of.
But also when that comes in, I always show my videos when it comes in and it shines, which is all brilliant, but as it shines on us, it's shining on the stuff, so you'll find that you'll start, which is why people can get anxiety when the Schumann's going. Especially with the white light, because it starts to bring up stuff. It's almost like it churns it up, and it's just like,
it's the shadow, doesn't it? It makes the shadows more exposed, so you're actually able to see the shadow better, and then you're able to see it and deal with it and just say, right, oh, that's why that keeps happening. Expose it and let it go.
It's interesting stuff, isn't it? And we can talk about it and talk about it and talk about it, because there's so many layers to it.
And
I'm glad that we're doing this as well, because there's so many people out there that are not doing it. I've been watching all the videos that you've done on these, all your videos, the coffee and chat ones as well, and it's like, this is so healing, because everybody else is talking about other stuff like jabs and stuff, and but this is what's needed, because if people are starting to go through crisis and awakening, they need to hear stories like this.
Yeah, absolutely.
All those nightmares I'm having, actually, there might be a reason for that. That panic attack I keep having in Sainsbury's or down that street, or...
Well, that's it. That was another thought that I had. You know, I mean, obviously the start of the pandemic and everything that was going on did create like this catalyst effect for people to start waking up and seeing things. But further down the line, 2 years later, there's a lot of these people that are like, they are starting to go through this process, and it can take quite a long time. And they might be thinking, actually, how do I deal with this now? Where do I go? And that's why I've started doing these coffee chats and going back to basics with some of my videos to start explaining how you can work on your energy and cleanse your energy and develop yourself, mind, body, and spirit. So yeah, there is a lot of change, there is a lot of challenge, but there's continuous learning that we have to go through, and development and upgrades
every day.
Yeah, and I think that's like you say, I think that's another reason why getting together with people like yourself and other healers, that we can get these little snippets and insights of information to just make us think, actually, there's something else going on here. This isn't me. There's something much deeper at work.
Yeah.
So we've reached our hour. I've really enjoyed chatting about this today. I wasn't sure which way it was going to go, because obviously it's a really deep subject. But yeah, I think it's been really informative, and it's put a spotlight over a lot of stuff that, like you say, sometimes needs to be exposed and needs to be talked about. But we need to realize that, you know, a lot of the shadow stuff that we have to work with, yes, it can be tough, but it helps bring more light our way as well. So I will say thank you once again to the lovely Claire Thackray.
Thank you for having me on.
Oh, you're welcome. We'll probably do another one again, because
definitely.
I do love talking to you and discovering all these other things that we touch on. I mean, a lot of the past life stuff, like I say, I don't have any sort of experience like what you've had, but that there is snippets of stuff that I experience, and I just think, there's something going on there. There's something different. This is something else that I'm being told here, or there's a message in that. So, and like I say, it's just making people tweak and think in another way. So yes, but we shall leave it at that. I will say much love to you once again. Thank you very much for joining, and we'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Okay. See you later. Thanks for watching. Bye.